We welcome back the Salem News reporters now here on MSO News Sports. I'm Rick Moore, and we have Paul Leighton and Caroline Enos, both of the Salem News, as news journalists with us today. Hopefully, we'll be joined by Dustin Luca in just a little while. So I want to welcome you both. I want to get right into it, and I want to start first with a really hot topic with Paul that has to do with what's going on in Beverly with respect to the school committee, the budget, and teachers. And that's not the only town that stuff is happening in, but what's going on, Paul?
Well, yeah, thank you, Rick. Last night there was a school committee meeting and a hearing on the school budget, and about 300 Beverly teachers showed up wearing red Beverly Teachers Association t-shirts. So they're also in the midst of contract negotiations, so that was part of it too. But they're basically saying they need higher pay. They're opposed to some proposed cuts, including they're cutting the elementary school librarian, which they've only had for a year or two after not having one for 10 years. And they're looking for paid parental leave, which they don't have. They actually held protests a couple of weeks ago outside all the school buildings in Beverly about the paid parental leave issue. So it was amazing that there were that many people crowded into the library at the middle school for the hearing. And I don't know, a couple dozen spoke. It went well past our deadline. And part of the problem is some of the pandemic money that all these schools have received over the last 4 years is running out this year. So the administration is saying that's why some of the cuts are being proposed. But so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's this combination of the budget is up now as it is every year, but it's also every 3 years you get these contract negotiations too. So those two things are combining this year to cause this controversy.
Over the years, the cry has been the complaint about the rising costs of special needs education and of if you don't have the resources in one city, you have to help kids get to another city. It's happening everywhere. I mean, Gloucester's going through a budget crunch right now, and in your investigating, if you will, Paul, is there any recourse as to how things can be better? I don't want to say better funded, but better dealt with. In other words, school systems are taxed in terms of not taxation, but they're pushed to their limit in terms of the resources that public schools have to provide. But those resources are not traditional resources, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So is anybody looking into how to better fund these, or maybe how to, I don't know, change the school system somehow? Because it just seems like, between the loss of vocational schools in each town and city and having to send kids to a regional voc, that's huge. That costs a lot of money for everyone. The increase in special needs, which is real, that is causing major funding problems, if I'm not wrong. And then the other thing is pandemic related, what do you call it? Social, emotional teaching now that wasn't really in the purview of public schools at one time. So if you understand what I'm trying to ask, is there any innovative thinking on this that you've come across?
Well, I think there have been a lot of programs established, I mean, in Beverly, and I'm sure in all schools, to meet these needs that you're talking about: social, emotional, special education. A couple of the teachers that have been around for a long time said years ago, if kids didn't fit in, quote unquote, then they weren't accommodated. And now all these schools, rightfully so, try to accommodate a range of kids with whatever needs they have. But the flip side, as you're pointing out, is that you need more people for that. You often, so many teachers. A big issue was the pay for the paraprofessionals, which in Beverly is like around $20,000 to, like, the higher mark is $26,000 for a professional, and people saying that sort of this outdated perception of paraprofessionals, and but teachers said that they need somebody else in the classroom basically to help them, and it's so valuable, which is what the paraprofessionals do. And so I don't know what the solution is. It's true, everybody knows that so much falls on the public schools and the teachers, You know, a lot of the problems that the kids bring from the outside, they get, you know, that they run into in the outside, they bring into school, and teachers need to deal with it. So yeah, it's a problem. You know, the Beverly budget is, the school budget is being increased by $4 million, but you mentioned the special education costs. Another one is the healthcare cost, and those go up, you know, more than that $4 million. So the budget's increasing, but the net effect is it's a cut, and they're going to be eliminating some positions. So yeah, it's this constant battle for where you're going to spend your dollars.
Yeah, between the lack of affordable housing and that, with respect to education, my mind is spinning. I just hope that someone can come up with something revolutionary. I think because we went from and before Caroline was at the high school, we had many years ago we had grouping of kids. I taught math, and so kids who had a particular um, understanding of math and so on, and we're good at math, were put in a certain group, and the kids who struggle with math were put in another group, and then that was deemed discriminatory. So instead of being able to have one person work with, say, 25 kids on a pretty much the same level, you got one person with 25 kids, possibly on 25 different levels. And I understand the intent, but it's just so hard to actually carry out. That's all I'm saying. So I hope there's a better way. All right, Caroline, let's go to something I think more enlightening and fun to talk about. In today's issue of the Salem News, you came across or did a story on, I think, something that's very innovative in terms of women's style, in particular women's style, but it's much more of a story than that. So bring us up to speed on that.
Yeah, so I featured this company called Woven Royal, which is created by Charlene Pena, a PBD native. And the company creates this really cool and innovative, almost like a head wrap or hat. It can honestly serve multiple purposes, but the goal of it is to protect curly and afro-textured hair. And what it is, it's a soft kind of like head wrap looking piece of fabric. On the inside, it's a satin lining, which is really good for hair. I mean, it prevents breakage. It helps keep curls intact because it's not, kind of a rough fabric. So when you're sleeping on it, it allows your hair to not crunch up and lose its style. And also it's cool because you can wear it out. It has like a string that makes it so it's almost like a hat bun. And it's a really cool piece of, I think, hair care technology. And the product's gone viral on TikTok. I think the owner said she had like 13 million views on, I think, one like YouTube short, and then like 11 million views on another TikTok. So people are talking about it. People are buying it. It's grown over the last few years. I believe the owner, she received like a pretty substantial, maybe $10,000 grant for the product back before the pandemic from the North Shore Business Association. So it's something that really celebrates that kind of hair, which has been a big push, nationally for years now, since there's been so much discrimination and kind of just non-acceptance of that kind of hair care and that kind of hairstyle and those kind of people. So this is a product that it's really for, I mean, anyone with curly hair, but designed to really empower and make people with that type of hair feel comfortable with their hair, because it is different taking care of a really curly head of hair than like a straight one. There's a lot more that goes into it, and there's stereotypes that you have to go up against. So it was really cool getting to talk to her and how creating that product helped her with her own hair journey. So it was a fun little feature that features a local business, which I'm always happy to do.
It was, yeah, it's awesome. And I got to tell you a quick story. Paul might appreciate this as a sports writer too. When I was a senior at UMass in 1970, Dr. J, Julius Irving, was a sophomore on the basketball team. And he just absolutely lit up the campus with his brilliance, his nice demeanor, his charisma. It was incredible. So we filled up the cage, it was called. It's not the Mullen Center. It was the cage. And we would fill that up every time UMass had a home game. And Irving's, Dr. J's afro would come into the gym before he ever showed up. I mean, because now he's got this close cut haircut now, but you see, I remember those days and it's like, man, that is so cool. It was gigantic and it was great. Let me ask you one question about the owner. what was it like talking with her? Because it seems like this could have been a person on Shark Tank or something, or, getting some kind of a patent, because it's so innovative and necessary, and it looks like fun at the same time, personal.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say Shark Tank because that went through my head multiple times when I was sitting in her little workshop over on Pulaski Street, the Mills 58, because it really is something that, I mean, I haven't seen before. Granted, I'm not deep in the curly hair care sphere since I don't have curly hair, but um, yeah, it's one thing that really struck me was when I looked up and there's this picture of a woman on the wall, and I was like, who's that woman? And she told me, oh, that's the creator of Spanx. Like she started out like I did, just had an idea, had this need where she didn't want to wear pantyhose, but like the control top. So she just cut off a pair of pantyhose and then realized she could make a business out of it. So she's like, if she can do it, I can do it. And there's this really cool entrepreneurship with that. And she does have a patent for the design, which is cool. I mean, I'm sure she's always, I have no idea what it's like to run a small business, let alone be an entrepreneur. So I know there's a lot of, hoops to jump through, but yeah, it was really cool. And I hope that she continues to grow. And maybe even if she did show up on the show, I'd be ecstatic. I'd write all about it.
Great story. We'll have the link to that story so everybody can look at the names and everything associated with that. I was fascinated by that this morning reading the paper, so that was most excellent. All right, let's go back to Beverly. We got time for a couple more things here. The articles I've seen recently, Paul, had to do with getting lights at one of the fields at Beverly High School. What's the status of that, and where will the lights be located?
Yes, the lights were approved by the city council to spend $1 million. The lights will be put up at the turf field at the high school. It's known as 40 Field after Frank 40, a longtime Beverly sports booster. But yeah, they're going to put lights and stands up there now. So this is the field that's inside the track that's at the high school. And it's a football field where they also play soccer, field hockey. And they have, Beverly is the only school of the 11 schools in the Northeastern Conference not to have a field with lights. So Beverly will be the last one to have one. As you know, Rick, for years, for decades, Beverly has played their football games at Herd Stadium, which does not have lights. And they still might play some games there, but they will have the option of playing some night games at the high school. And the good thing about this was a city council meeting, and dozens of high school students showed up and spoke in favor of this. So that was nice to see. And it's not just sports too. I was interested to learn that the marching band that performs at halftime of the football games and in various competitions, they have to practice inside the field house because the field at the high school is always being used. And some of the students were saying sometimes the JV games, the field hockey, soccer games that are scheduled for after the varsity games either have to get canceled or shortened because of darkness. So the students made a good case for this, and the city council voted in favor. They're going to go in for the next school season. That's the plan.
I think it's a great thing. But let me ask you, Paul, is there any better venue on the North Shore than Herd Stadium in mid-October with that green grass and that background of all the color? If you're sitting on the home side, is there any better place to watch a game than that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Both of us have spent a lot of time there over the years, and that's always been a concern. It's funny, I think over the years, I don't know, I don't hear that as much. I'm wondering if it's like the old timers like you and me, Rick. I don't know,
Right.
with that, Herd Stadium. But but the point was, in the mayor, Mayor Cahill somebody asked about, well, what does this mean for Herd Stadium? And he said he doesn't envision the city selling it or anything. He said the city owns very few pieces of land, and he sees that as being used still as a field, as a recreational space for years. The Pop Warner football teams play there. Lacrosse can play there. I think the field is too narrow for soccer, but so Herd Stadium will still be in use, and I'm assuming there will still be football games. I would assume the Thanksgiving football games will still be played there, but now there's going to be this option to play games at night also. And it also benefits the youth programs that can use the field at the high school too with light. So it's not just for the high school football team. It's for all, you know, for many of the high school sports, for the marching band, and for youth sports. So it has a pretty big impact.
Excellent, excellent. And Caroline, a story on something called the Ingersoll Tavern that has to do with history. Would you tell me about that, please?
Yes, yes. So as we all know, the witch trials are very prevalent in the Salem area, specifically in Danvers, where they pretty much started. So on Hobart Street in Danvers, there is this old colonial building from, I think, the 1670s. I'm forgetting right off the top of my head, but it was the Ingersoll's Tavern back in the day. And when the witch trial started, the first three accused, Sarah Osborne, Sarah Good, and Tituba, were supposed to be examined there. Because as you know, the witch trials, the people who were first accused lived in Salem Village, which is now Danvers. So too many people showed up at the site that day. They had to move the examination somewhere else, but other witch trials victims like Rebecca Nurse have been held there. It was like basically a watering hole for people who are coming to see the trials or see the witchcraft hysteria, for the town to congregate during it, because you know, it was their tavern. And it's also where, like, during the revolution and the lead up to it, where local Danvers militiamen who would go and serve and die at Lexington and Concord, they would go there before they would go off to battle. So it's very significant building. It's one of the most significant buildings still standing, tied to the witch trials. And for years, it's always been a private home once the tavern closed down. But then about 10 years ago, a man from New Hampshire bought it, did not move in. It is now sitting there essentially rotting, because there's no heat, no electricity, no water, nothing being sent to the house. A hole has developed in the roof that's just been covered by a tarp for about 5 years now. It's no one from the town knows what it looks like on the inside because the owner hasn't let them go in. A barn from the same era on the property has fallen down just from disrepair and collapsing. And the wood pile from that barn is still sitting on the property. When you drive by, it doesn't look super condemned, but it doesn't look good. And it hasn't been officially condemned by the town, but there is a red X on the building to tell first responders, don't go in there. There's a fire, just we don't know if it's safe. And there's a real concern that this building is going to fall to the ground or, you know, be irreparably damaged. The owner, the town's been in contact with him, and he says the right things according to the town. He's like, oh, I want to turn it into a museum or a bed and breakfast or something along those lines. He just doesn't take action, and he won't let the town inside. So local historians and just concerned citizens have come together, and they got an article in the town meeting warrant for the end of the month to say that it's illegal to let national historical sites in very specific areas of the town. It's illegal for them to be demolished by neglect, because with historical sites, you can't just go and obviously tear it down without going through a bunch of city hoops, or rather hoops with the town. So they're trying to basically throw a Hail Mary to save it at this point, because the owner just doesn't want to do anything or isn't doing anything. So it would be interesting to see if that goes through a town meeting. And basically what that will do, if it does get passed, is it allows the town's building inspector to be able to kind of go in, because there's a concern that it's going to violate this bylaw. And another kind of route that the town's looking at is receivership of the property, which they've already initiated with the state. It would take maybe about a year to complete. And that would allow the state to step in and facilitate a forced sale of the property to another third party. But there's no guarantee it'll go to someone that wants to preserve its historical nature beyond just allowing the building to stay standing. Because, you know, as much as some people probably would like there to be more restraints on what people can do with historical properties, it's really, as long as the building is still standing, you can kind of do what you want with it. So there's actually been a ton of public outcry about this. There's a whole Facebook page called Save Ingersoll's Tavern, where I joined it, and people post daily about wanting to save it, how they can save it, updates on what the building looks like.
Wow.
One of the local historians, Dan Gagnon, who's a huge witch trials, he's an expert. He wrote a book about Rebecca Nurse, all this stuff, and he's very involved in the town. He basically said he gets letters and emails and Facebook messages from people across the country, sometimes across the world, asking how they can help. if they can write to a local legislator or just anything they can do, if they can donate. And it's really all down to this one property owner right now. So it's crazy to think that this very historical, significant building might just collapse. So hopefully it won't. There's action trying to be taken, but it's interesting to follow because there is that crowd of people who want to see what happens.
All right. Well, stay tuned, guys. I have to run. Caroline Enos, Paul Leighton of the Salem News. Thank you both.